I say this time and time again. You do not need to be the smartest person in the room. You just don't. But you better surround yourself with the people that know better than you where you're weak. And so I have no problems being honest about that. I don't do CAD. I don't do SketchUp. I will not do those things. And the reason being is by the time I learn it, I will have taken away from what I'm actually really good at.
Welcome to the Designer's Oasis podcast. I'm your host, Kate Bendewald. If you're tired of one-size-fits-all advice to running your interior design business, you're in the right place. Join me each week as we dive into topics to help you run a thriving interior design business without the hustle. We'll talk about the business of design, but also mindset and mental health, because I know when you thrive, so will your life and business. It wasn't that long ago that I stepped away from my corporate interior design job to build my own design business so that I could realize my own creative dreams, have more time with the people I love, and serve my clients at the highest level while making more money than I ever could have working for someone else. It wasn't always easy, and I made my share of mistakes along the way. Fast forward to today, and I've learned a thing or two. Since then, I've built multiple six-figure interior design businesses on authentic word-of-mouth referrals with many repeat clients. And I want to share it all with you, the ambitious, inspired, and I get it, occasionally overwhelmed interior designer who shares this dream of transforming lives through the art of interior design. You can do this. Thank you for letting me spend part of this day with you. Let's get to it. Christina Canales, I'm so glad you're here chatting with me today.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to the podcast.
Yay, I'm so excited. So excited to catch up with you and really talk about some of the things that we discussed earlier and then kind of what you guys, asked me, like what I wanted to talk about. So yeah, I'm just so thankful to be here and yay, I'm excited. I'm excited for what you do and hopefully some of the things that I've done can help others.
Oh my Lord, you've done so much, and we're going to get right into it today. So I just a little backstory for our listeners. We share a photographer, Jeff Jones, who's a dear friend of both of us, and he's been a guest on the podcast episode. On the podcast. Ooh, Kate words. But I'll be sure to link to his episodes because it was one of our most popular
Awesome.
episodes. But yeah, and then you and I also have a mutual friend, Whitney, in the industry,
Yes,
Whitney Walker of Farrington Lane. Shout out to her.
love
She's
Whitney.
she's also been a guest,
Yes.
and she's just lovely. And so somehow you guys all got connected. You all live in the Austin area, and now I'm jealous. I want to move back.
And come back, come back. And then me and you connected
Yeah.
because I was working on a project in Denver and Jeff was shooting a project for me there and was mentioning that he was shooting a project for you as well. And then I was like, oh, I need to talk to her because I need some help with some things as far as like finding vendor relationships. So, anyways, you were super helpful and kind. And I'm so glad that we got to connect that way.
Yeah, I love it too. I find that it's so helpful when you have a community of designers that you can have sort of a back channel of conversations with by text or whatever. It's like, where's a vendor for this? Like,
Yeah.
who's your favorite go-to for X, Y, and Z? And because otherwise this industry can feel very isolating. It can feel very
And overwhelming.
lonely.
And
Yeah.
overwhelming. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, well, let me call these 10 different carpenters and let me just go through the list and I don't have a reference for their work or. So it's always great to talk to other individuals in the industry that can say, hey, this person's great, call them. So anyways, that's how me and you connected and I felt really grateful for that.
Yeah, well, and I instantly
fell in love with you and hearing your story and hearing about what you're doing. So
Oh,
why don't we take a little, let's back up a little bit. I want to
yeah.
hear, can you tell our listeners, because it's really neat how you came into this industry, and to give us a little backstory, because you work with your husband, you guys have a branding agency, and I just want to hear the full story.
Yeah.
Give it to us.
So Jose and I met, we will have been married for almost 20 years next week. So we met in college. We're both really into design and art. His background is graphic design. And so he went into the ad world, really got started there. I was a teacher, just trying to pay the bills. And finally, when he was ready to quit and start his own company, I was also at the point where I was ready to quit my job. We had just had our
Mhm.
first baby. And so, yeah, he quit. He started his own thing. And through that process, I'm at home with a baby. And I'm just to be honest, I was really bored and I was ready to like do some work. Like, what can I do? And so I started dabbling in design. And so, yeah, I got my first like really big opportunity with my cousin, who's Sarah Ortega. She owns Sarah O, which is a jewelry store in the Denver area. And she said, she was starting her own store, and she said, I don't have much money, but if I could fly you up, could you just tell me, like, let's spend the weekend, tell me where everything needs to go. And she had just got a building. I believe it was a bike store. So, I mean, it
Yeah,
needed like,
hold the phone for a second, because I have seen the interior shots that Jeff did for this store. That was your first project?
so that was not so rewind. So we did round one of that store, and then we just updated it this last year. So that was
No.
my first like project. And through that, my husband and his team, who have, their design studio, their branding, meaning they help build brands and tell their stories. They did Sarah O's logo and packaging systems and things of that sort. And so it was kind of like this joint venture that we were working on together. And over time, we started taking on those types of projects. Um, and sometimes we would work together, sometimes we wouldn't. There's times where I'm doing residential projects. So I always say I am not a one trick pony. We like to do a little bit of everything, but our start really was it truly got started with working on that project together, but also to building our office. So we found a property in Austin. It has 2 acres, and we decided, hey, we'll build our office on the back part of the property. And over time, then we'll build our house in the front, and we call it the compound. The compound will serve as a way for clients to really see how we do design, plus how we live it out. So it's all encompassing. Our team comes to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They're in the office, but they're on the back part of the property. And so, anyways, with all that said, we just started getting our hands, into whatever we thought was fun, and we started working together.
That is such a refreshing approach to hear, sort of this idea that you just really jumped in with both
Yeah.
feet.
It wasn't linear by any means. It was just
Mhm.
like, sure, that sounds fun. And I'd always wanted to do design, but I'll be really honest. I feel like to do design, you either have to have money to get started to do it because it is such a long endeavor of trying to figure out, well, first of all, you got to find the clients that have the money. You have to stick with that process. Sometimes, a project can take up to 2 years.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
like, it's so hard. So, um, we just got our hands wet and started just going and figuring it out. We built our home together, and I think that really was like a time where we realized, oh my gosh, we really do love working together.
Mhm.
I think that's mostly a deal breaker for a couple. when they have
Yeah.
to build the house together. But it was like, oh no, this is so much fun. So
Do you
yeah.
guys have, I want to hear more about that. Do y'all have sort of roles that you play that are complementary to each other? Or are there
Yeah.
areas where you overlap, or how do you guys sort of make that work for both of
Yeah.
you?
So it just depends. And I think we approach every project with a new set of eyes. And we for sure have our lanes. Like Jose's team, their lane is branding. They're wonderful at concepting and creating palettes and making sure that the brand really speaks to who the client is or what the client's trying to convey. I'm not trying to go in there and tell them fonts, and I don't do that stuff. But I will tell you, what kind of furniture, or fabric or how to source. I think that's really what I have in the fire with them is like
Yeah.
I'm really good at sourcing. And I really just chalk it up to I'm addicted, I guess, to Instagram and following everybody's life and being like, I don't know what product that is. My husband was laughing at me the other night. I was like scrolling through celebrities' Instagram, and he goes, "You don't even look at the celebrities. All you're doing is scrolling in and looking at their furniture and screenshotting it." I'm like, "Yeah, that's all I do because I'm trying to figure out who's the designer there or what piece that is." So yeah, I feel like we definitely have our lanes, but we have no problems helping each other out. And especially when we're doing branding and interiors, it's a constant conversation in the office. And especially with colors and making sure that we're really trying to tell the story that matches what the client wants.
Yeah. So, and are you focusing on residential and commercial both, or figuring that out? Where are you with that? Because they are very different animals, if we're being honest.
They are very different animals. We were doing both. I will say I am finding so my husband's or our website it's very focused heavily on the branding piece, and then it has my interior section. So we are working on a new website for interiors. So he'll still hold the interiors on our like Canales and Co site. However, I'm going to make it a little bit more honed in. So, especially for residential projects, because I want to really speak to those types of projects as well. I do like residential. There's parts of commercial that I enjoy. For the most part with clients, they are quicker to make decisions because they have something that needs to open. So it seems like that can be a little bit more refreshing. Where to me, residential, it's personal, it's their space. And I feel like sometimes it can take a longer time or indecisiveness with, are you sure? And it's like, yes, we are sure. So like a restaurant, they're like, okay, great. Like I got to make profit. So it's easier. So it's just each one's different. In commercial, there's like a particular project that I'm working on right now that I think when it's all said and done, it will be 2 years. And so there's that longevity where you every day have to get up and be like, I am in it for. So for me, for those long projects, I do like a visioning exercise for myself that really helps get me to the end. I will,
About this.
yeah, so I'll just like meditate on the final product. And I already in my head, like run a script in my head with like the photographer, probably Jeff, if he's available. And I already am thinking about all the shots, the shot list, and that makes me happy. And so if I can think about that, um, and really like hone in on those thoughts, I feel like these longer projects kind of get me through. And I'm like, okay, we're going to finish it and it's going to be beautiful. Yeah, it's just, it's a long process sometimes.
100%. And I think that what you're talking about is so, it's so important because in my mind, it can really achieve two things. Like you're talking about it from the sense of, well, when you're in that sort of messy middle of a project, right?
Yes.
Which is usually after design and as construction is happening.
Yes. Yes.
Um, that is what can help you sort of stay focused and get motivated to just keep showing up, right? But I do think that using that same exercise can make you a better designer, right? Because if you're thinking about the photography and the shots from the very beginning, you're going to be a better designer because you're going to be thinking about what are those moments that are really going to stand out? What are
Yeah.
those, what is the if just thinking in residential terms, like this is the backdrop to your life, like
Right.
we still need an Instagrammable moment somewhere. We still need to have sight lines that make sense. We need to
Yeah.
have, spaces that are grounding. And
Mhm.
if you're thinking about the shot list and how that is going to play out, then
Yeah.
at the early stages, you're going to be designing, be a better designer. And I've seen your work. It's outstanding. It's
Thank
absolutely
you. You're
beautiful.
so kind.
You're a
You're so
natural.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's like I said, I think that's the main thing that I just like fixate on to get myself through these longer projects. It's
Yeah.
like once the shot list, and of course through that, it really does help me envision how the client's going to use it. Because that's the thing with commercial,
Mhm.
you do have to think through the hundred ways that a client will use the space or damage the space because it is commercial. So you're thinking through all those things as well. So I feel like it gives me just um, a better vision for that space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to jump into talking about something that you and I've talked about personally and
Mhm.
privately before, and that is just really about the life of a business owner
Yeah,
and what goes on in our heads when we're having our quiet moments, right? So you're a mom, you've got two
two
kiddos, right?
kids. I have two kids.
How
Yes,
old are they?
I have an 11-year-old and I have a 6-year-old, and they go to two different schools. And one is home part time as she is homeschooled. And so I have someone that comes in to homeschool her. Like I said, our office is in the back part of our property,
We call it a compound.
the compound. So I feel like there are a lot of balls in the air.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
um, and a lot of juggling. And then, um, to be frank with you, I really hadn't taken our business serious in the past as far as or the interiors. I would just do 2 to 3 projects a year. I mean, I took it serious as far as the work I did, but as far as building a model for growing our business, I didn't give much thought to it because I was in the throes of parenthood and then COVID and building a home and building our office. And so last year, my husband approached me. It was in September. It was sorry, September of 2022, and he said, "Hey, I really think we need to like build this thing and really bridge the gap with interiors and branding." And
Mhm.
so that's kind of, where we started and really tried to get a team on board to help support me. And so, yeah, the life of, working, having a business, but there's two separate entities to it. Um, yeah, it's a lot.
I'll say, right. Well, I'm going to screw this up, but there was an Instagram post I saw recently, and it said something to the effect of like, what do you need to be a good business owner? It's like a dash of delusion and uh, a sprinkle of oh my God, I knew I was going to fuck this up. Delusion and
Just
just like ignorance or and because there's so much of like you don't know what you don't know going into something, and as much as I hate that phrase because it is trite, it has
yeah,
a place.
yeah,
And I think what's really cool though is like it sounds like you and your husband, um there was this pivotal moment where you sort of were like, okay, well, we survived a pandemic, our marriage is thriving to have after building a custom home, we're raising two children, right? That's a lot to carry at once. But there was this like opening where you guys said, okay, so now we probably have some bandwidth to put our energy behind this in a bigger way that we haven't in the past. What does that look like? It sounds like that meant some support for you, Christina. Is that right? Can you be more specific around that? Because I think there's someone listening right now for a fact who sees themselves in your shoes, that they have been, I know because I talk to hundreds of designers, they are oftentimes when they come to me at this moment in time where they're sort of past some big milestones in their lives and they finally have some bandwidth and they're ready to take this business seriously and sometimes not sure where to start there. Yeah. And so I know it'll be different for everybody, but walk us through what were some of those practical things that you and your husband decided on in order to put some gas behind this thing.
Yeah. So the first thing we did was we talked about my weaknesses. So where am I not proficient and where am I weak? And I say this time and time again, you do not need to be the smartest person in the room. You just don't. But you better surround yourself with the people that know better than you where you're weak. And so I have no problems being honest about that. I don't do CAD. I don't do SketchUp. I will not do those things. And the reason being is by the time I learn it, I will have taken away from what I'm actually really good at. And so there's no shame in that. So I think the first thing is we outlined where I was deficient and we outlined where he was deficient. And luckily for us, we were already looking for a program director for the studio, not the interiors part, but for the overall studio to help with new business. So we were already in that process. And so we had talked to that person saying, hey, if you were to come on with us, we also need to help build out an interiors department.
This was pause for a second just to get some clarity. So you were already in the process of hiring someone that could help with business development. So keeping that pipeline full.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we wanted someone who had a background in advertising, since that's my husband's like realm, right? And we wanted someone who had expertise, who had been in the ad world, who knew what they were doing. So yes, we went after someone who had lots of experience, and in part that could balance and help out with these two things in our business. So that was already kind of in the works. We're looking, and obviously, like I don't know, like I said, CAD, SketchUp. So then we just put out, like, I hate to say put out an ad, but essentially you just put out fillers, and we got tons of candidates, and we were able to find someone who did all the things that I don't want to do or can't do. And it's been such a great fit to work with someone who can talk the architectural talk. These commercial projects do require us to work with architects. And there are certain systems in place with these architects, or even their systems when we're working with the construction team. And this person was familiar with the language, was familiar with all the types of things that she would need to do. So she really, like, her focus is on that. So then I don't have to be like, I don't know how to respond to that. I might really know how to respond to it if it was in my language.
Sure.
But sometimes I'm just like, they'll be like, oh, look at bulletin 5, the RFI needs X, Y. I'm like, okay, just tell me what you want. You just needed a new lighting plan. Great. So it's actually quite funny. And I'm just being honest. Like, I think for the longest time, I thought, oh my gosh, every designer has to know all these things. And you don't. You just need to make sure that you surround yourself with other people that are better in those areas, so you can excel at what you're good at. So, so we have Tatiana, and she's been such a huge help to our lives. And creating certain systems. She has some expertise that clearly I don't have. She also came from a wonderful interior designer in New York City. So she just had a lot of things at play that we needed.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So you've got this program director who's helping you with business development, and you
Yeah, and processes and making sure, like, are you really documenting your time? Like, I cannot stress this, even though I suck at this. You have to document your time. We use Harvest,
yes,
and
love it.
I can go through, I can see where I am under or over, and I can then say, Tatiana, I cannot have you drawing anymore for this particular client. Like, we got 2 hours left of work and I need to save it for field observation or whatever. So, I think if you don't document those things, then how do you price your next big project? You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't document, you won't have an idea. And so I will say that was really hard starting out last year because there were a few projects that we bid it completely wrong because we didn't have anything to go off of. We're a year in, we have plenty to go off of now. And man, it's a game changer. Also, I didn't realize how much I was undervaluing my time.
Yeah, say more about that.
Yeah. So, sometimes I will be 21 emails in just trying to order some fabric. And people are like, how is that even possible? Well, it's a custom fabric. It's dyed. It's made in Belgium. They don't know if they're actually going to be able to make 55 yards of this. So, it's going back and forth. And so you just spend so much time when it's custom. And that's why we like custom. That's why we always are gravitating towards the most beautiful pictures because they were the ones that have, the 21 emails for that one piece of fabric that's going on that sofa.
Yeah.
And the next, picture I post, I need to say like, 10 hours into plaster, what's it called? Samples or, um, 12 hours with hardware. It's like you don't see it in the picture, but the hours are there.
Yes, and I think that is, you're speaking to something that is important to me. I've always advocated for tracking your time, and not just tracking your time overall for a project, but incrementally knowing like what did certain types of tasks take
Yeah.
for you to do for the very reason that you say, so that you can be better at creating scope for your next project. And I'm in the throes of thinking about this right now because I'm getting ready. We're doing a CEO corner coming up that is all about, confidence in your services. And so one of the things I'm talking about is like, it doesn't matter how you charge, whether it's flat fee or hourly or
Thank you.
hybrid, which is what I love to use. You still have to understand your time,
Yeah.
and projects aren't priced out just on time alone. There's a matrix of information that goes into
Yeah.
that, thinking about the project location, how does
Yeah.
that going to impact time? Thinking about the nuances of the client or the level of detail, the level of customization. And so when I get designers who are like, well, how long should it take to do a set of drawings? And I'm like, that's like saying, how long should labor and delivery take? Right?
It's all dependent on your client. It's all dependent on your vision for the space.
Your
Um,
level of expertise and experience.
so many things. I will say in Harvest, that's the time tracking app that we use.
Sure.
We have it for each client, like it will be project management, mood board, client presentation, observation. Like we have all these different sections. So then at the end of the project, you can kind of see, okay, this is where we are overspending our time. And the great example was we had a huge residential project this year. We bid the project. Luckily, the program director was so adamant about the hours spent and the amount that we needed for this project. I was like, oh, I don't know. That's so much. I just don't know. Oh my gosh, we used it. We used it and more. Because once again, the client that we were working with had gotten rid of her contractor during the project. So there were times where we were acting as fill-ins and having to create drawing sets within a day or two for cabinetry detail or let's get rid of this closet. It was a new build. So it was like, let's get rid of this closet. Let's now make this a station for the iPads and all, like a built-in. So it was coming up with these ideas on the fly and having to produce drawings. So the next person that she hired could fulfill the standard. I say all that because we went over in hours with going to site visits. We were doing maybe 3 site visits a week. Well, when you lose a contractor, that's what happens. And so we could easily pull up and we could show her, like, yeah, we're spending all of our hours in site visits. This is why we are where we are. And she appreciated it. Like, she's like, oh my gosh, it's right there. It's not like I'm just like, oh, I think this, or maybe it's there. It's right here.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can't argue with that for sure. What has been for you the most surprising thing about running your own interior design business that you didn't maybe see or I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but is there something specific that either that you've loved about it or you were unprepared for, but what has been one of the biggest surprises jumping into this the way that you have?
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me would be I don't think I realized how much I would enjoy working with my husband and his team. I have always I'm an introvert, and I really struggle with probably working with others because I've never had to. So I think it really does surprise me when he gets off of work, meaning we walk from our studio inside the house,
Yeah.
and we still want to talk about the projects we're working on or the things that we're excited about. The thing with Jose and I, we're both dreamers, and I think that's where we really connect. And I think that's what's exciting about having a business. Um, but it's also so scary. I think I've discussed with you, like, I really struggle with anxiety. Like, it's pretty bad. And it can feel debilitating, but luckily it's so helpful to have a partner like my husband who knows that about me, and he's just like, Christina, let's like refocus, let's like, we're working on the same type of thing. So it's nice to have someone in your corner. I think that's been the biggest surprise for me, is seeing my husband in my corner for me. And I know that sounds maybe sounds cheesy, or I don't know. I feel like he understands what I'm going through. And I feel like if I was doing it by myself, he might be like, I don't understand why you're so stressed out. I mean, he sees it firsthand. Like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. And that's the thing too. I don't think I realized the level of just how intricate and how challenging it can be to balance finding the beautiful things, purchasing the beautiful things, making sure install happens seamlessly, making sure the client feels good about the project. Essentially, you are like a fairy waving a wand and trying to get it to abracadabra, to just come together. And I think sometimes I feel that pressure feels I don't know if it's isolating, or it feels like a lot. And at that time, I just have to remember, like, I'm not doing brain surgery on anybody, so nobody's dying today. It's just design. Like, there's always a solution, you know?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for being so candid about struggling with anxiety.
Yeah.
This is a podcast where we have talked a lot about mental health, and I've talked about my own
Yeah.
experiences with anxiety and attention deficit. And so
Yeah.
we have an audience that really has told us that they appreciate that because
Yeah.
they have felt like that's not something that we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And it's we take our work so personally as creatives, and it's hard. And I don't have an answer to this, but I just know that I've experienced this similar feeling as you, where it's like, I fucking care a lot about the work that I do, and I want my clients to be over the moon, right?
Of
And I
course.
care
Yes.
deeply, and I want it to be beautiful, and I want it to get published, and I want to have gorgeous photography. So
Yeah.
it does feel like there's a lot at stake, but there's something that you just said that I think is such a good, important reminder that at the end of the day, we can get to all of those things, but sometimes when we're having that moment of like panic or anxiety, or like things feel like the wheels are coming off, or whatever the case might
Right.
be, that a little bit of perspective can really help pull you out of that. That at
Yep.
the end of the day, this is not brain surgery. Nobody is
Nobody's going to die. No.
nobody's gonna die from this. Um, like asking yourself, like I've had to ask myself in many situations, what's the worst thing that could happen? Right.
Yes.
And the worst thing that can happen most of the time ain't that bad.
Also, yeah, and it probably won't happen. I just read something
Right.
yesterday that really helped me, and I meditated it. I meditated on it this morning and prayed
Mhm.
through it. And that was, if you can allow yourself to think of the worst case scenario, you also need to allow yourself to think of the best case scenario. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to start doing that,
Yeah.
because that is so important to really fixate
Mhm.
on,
Mhm.
especially if you're going down, the tunnel of like, oh gosh, this might happen. Da, 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 da. It's like, okay, but what if all of that doesn't happen, and
Right.
this and what you really want happens, and
Yeah.
it's really amazing.
Yeah.
So I think you have to allow yourself, if you're going to go down that hole, you have to also give yourself an out and think of the most, like the best possible solution.
I love
Um,
that so much.
so I think that was something I was thinking about today. Like, think about all the things that I thought worst case scenario,
Mhm.
and let's think through the positive. And, I have in the past, I've had some hard things happen. And guess what? I'm alive and I'm still doing just fine. And it all got, resolved. It was fine. It was
Right.
fine.
Yeah, I know. At worst, it's a headache. It's so true. I was just chatting with a friend who lives here. She's an interior designer, and she had a phone call coming up with a client who, in her mind, I mean, these air quotes here, was upset
Yeah.
over some side tables that came in and they weren't the right size. And she had knots in her stomach. She was so
Yeah.
nervous about this conversation. And I just said to her, honey, listen, the story you're telling yourself right now is that she's angry with you. Um, you don't know that. This is just a perception that you're creating.
Yep.
As so many times we fill in the gaps, as I think Brene Brown really drove home
Yeah.
with us. We fill in the gaps of what we think is happening. And usually when we fill those gaps in with our lack of knowledge, but with just making assumptions, it's so much worse than it's actually going to
Yeah.
be.
It's not
And
even, it's just bullshit. That's what we fill out.
yeah.
This is
And I said, you don't know that,
wow.
but you know how to handle it no matter what. This is not a big deal. We are talking about side tables here.
Yeah.
There are much bigger problems in the world. If she's really, really, really mad about this, there's a character question that you
Yeah.
guys can address at that point. But all you have to do is figure out what's actually going on and get them replaced. If you need to pay for a restocking fee, then do it. That's why you have markups, right? So that we have some cushion.
Yep.
Just go have and she called me. She was like, oh my God, she wasn't even mad. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
And the reason I know is because I was her. I've
Yeah.
been her in my own situations where I got myself into a knot over something that wasn't nearly as big of a deal
Right.
as what I thought. And everything is fixable. And but it is. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and feelings of anxiety and
Mhm.
imposter can
Oh, for sure.
totally creep in and
Yeah.
overwhelm us. So how do you, when you start to feel that come up, like whether it's imposter or whether it's anxiety that you're like doing things right or hitting the marks that you want to be hitting, what's the conversation that you have with yourself to unwind that?
Oh, like when I go down the dark tunnel. I feel like for me, like like, I'll be honest, like the last few weeks have been very high anxiety for me. And I think the best thing I do is I just talk about it. I'm just really honest. And I tell my husband, this is where I'm at mentally. I might be checked out. I'm so sorry. I just try to approach everything with authenticity. It's actually one of our pillars in our brand. Like, it's a core value, it's a pillar for us. And so I just try to be honest. I don't want to be fake. I don't want to pretend like I have it together. I just, I just say, like, this is where I'm at mentally. I might need to go on a walk. One of the things I do is I'm also a ceramicist and I love pottery. It's actually where I feel like it's the only time that I am always living in time. It's the only space where I don't feel like I'm living in time. I get so lost in what I'm doing. And I feel like no one's judging me. And I end up creating, in my opinion, like beautiful things. And one of the things, because I have been struggling with anxiety for the past couple of weeks, my husband was like, I need you to go back to pottery because I haven't been doing it for like the past 6 months because I've just been so busy with work. So he like watched me call and book an appointment to go back to the studio. So he was just like, that's what you know. He's like, I need you to get back.
Lovely.
It's lovely. And so yeah, so I think for me, and also I walk, we have a trail behind our house. I go on walks. I pray. And yeah, I think that really does reground me. And sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it's just a season and I just have to get through it.
Yeah. I love the idea of normalizing this because, it is, I think it's the default thing that we go to when we're experiencing that, at least for me, is that this isn't normal, that this is like, there's something wrong with me if I'm having these like anxious feelings. My husband is the opposite, where like I almost wish he would get a little anxiety about something. He just is unfazed by stuff. And I love that about him because he is my rock when those things happen. It's almost like a tinge of jealousy, like, really, that doesn't like freak you out. It's like, no.
Like, also, I don't understand.
And and so I've just recently started to be able to get to a place where I can say to myself, like, wait a second, there's nothing wrong with you.
No.
We're not humans, I don't think, are equipped to deal with the amount of inputs that we have on a daily basis, whether it's thinking about technology, thinking about the expectations for how much we're supposed to get done in a day, or timelines, or raising a family, or having to deal with, the unexpected. I told you before we got on live, I had this unexpected thing happen yesterday and it derailed my entire day. And honestly, a year ago, I would have fallen into victim mentality that happened to me.
Yeah.
And now I can go through that experience and just say, you know what? This is life. This is happening, and it's nobody's fault. There's nothing that can be done. It's normal. And we're just going to pick it all back up the rest of the week. It's only Monday. You have the rest of the week to figure it out and just totally readjust expectations. And that, along with meditation, yoga, walking, those are my
your go-tos.
Tools, yeah, in my toolkit that I love. Because even this morning, as I was getting ready to sit down and to get ready for these podcasts, I could still feel like the anxiety lingering from yesterday, from like, okay, I didn't get all the prep work done that I wanted to do for these episodes, and I am getting ready to, start a couple of conversations, and I'm sitting here at my desk. And I just felt the call to go sit in my chair. And I was like, you cannot do another thing until you go sit your ass in that chair and you spend 20 minutes meditating. And that is what it took in order for me to get my head back on straight. So like, I just think that as our world gets more complex and we have more and more demands on us,
Yeah.
that anxiety, although I don't think everyone experiences it, I do think more and more people experience it, and it's normal, and that we have to readjust our expectations in terms of
For sure.
what we're expected to do in order to be more resilient, and find whatever tools you have that work best for you to turn to in those moments so that you can keep going. As creatives, I know, Christina, you'll understand this, that is one of the biggest zappers of creativity is that fear and anxiety and imposter. You cannot get into flow state. You cannot get into deep
Right.
creative thinking when you're experiencing fear and anxiety and overwhelm.
For sure.
And that's the fun stuff. That's what we want. That's where we want to be.
We just want to flow.
Yeah.
Love it. Oh my gosh.
Well, your husband, tell me his name again.
His name's Jose.
Jose. Shout out to
Yes.
him. He sounds delightful. We all need a Jose in our lives, whether that's your spouse or a best friend or a mentor. But I love that you
It's been a long time coming, though. You know what I
what's
mean?
that?
It's been a long time coming, like that he's delightful. I'm just, just if
You
he's listening, I just have to, I don't want him to think that he's just perfect. That's all.
we won't tell him.
He's pretty great. He's really
Yeah,
great.
I think it speaks to the importance of having, one of the things you and I've talked about before was like how lonely this industry can feel.
Yeah,
And
I think that to me has been something I struggle with is, and I think because I am an introvert, like reaching out to people feels so awkward. I also am not good at text message or like through Instagram and stuff like that. I'm very literal. So I read stuff and I'm like, what did they mean by that? Um, but like conversation, if I just like called someone, it feels
Yeah.
natural. I can hear their intonation and things of that sort. But yeah, I sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know who to ask for this. Like who can I reach out to? And so it is so important. And it's unfortunate that I am just now getting to that point where I am reaching out to people. I should have been doing it years ago because my path would have had, I think, way more success and a lot more ease if I had more community around me to support me. And so I
Well,
just,
you're doing
who's
it
up?
now.
Yes, I am. And I just want to encourage people. Yes, it feels awkward to reach out to another designer and who cares? Like, who cares what they think about you? And that's where I'm at. I don't care anymore. So there's that.
Christina, tell our audience what you did last year because I got such a kick out of it. Because this is about like what you're talking about is reaching outside of your comfort zone and doing something that feels
Yes.
a little maybe unnatural for you. But you did a little mind trick with yourself last year. Can you share what that was?
You're talking about the unoffended.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the last, I don't know, 10, 12 years, I write down a word that I'm going to focus on for the year. And then I write down my spiritual goals, physical goals, emotional goals, just all the things. I write them down and I write down what I want. And then I write down a sentence to meditate on in my head. Well, and I keep it at my mirror. So when I'm brushing my teeth, I can look at it. So I was tired of feeling, I think you touched on this a while ago, just a few minutes ago, like victim, like this happened to me. So I decided to fixate on a word. I say fixate because I really did fixate on it. And that was, I was going to live an unoffended life and I was going to do it for 1 year and see how it changed my mindset. Holy cow. I cannot tell you how much happier I was. No, for real. Like I reached out to this person, they didn't get back to me, not offended. Like I wasn't meant for that person at that time. And so that's how I see it. Like we weren't meant to work together on this, or maybe I wasn't meant to be invited to this. Um, and it's not personal. It's just like, okay, I was meant for something else. And when you rephrase it, it has so much power. So for me, unoffended has really helped shape me. And then this year is to live a non-judgmental life. I think as interior designers, we are a little bit judgmental because we're always assessing a situation. We want it to be better. And so I just want to apply that non-judgmental aspect across the board to everything, just to be a better person. And obviously, you know, when I'm around people, I don't want them to feel like I expect something from them or need them to change. I need them to be themselves, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So
I hope that same feeling of non-judgment you're extending to yourself, because
yes, and so that
that's,
is
we talked about that's such a reflection when we're judging others. It's sometimes a reflection of our own judgment of ourselves.
and what I think too, it goes back to what I was saying. It's that authenticity piece. Like when you're authentic, you don't have to be judgmental. You're just letting people see you for who you are. And so I think for me, that's where I go back to is it's kind of like, yes, I'm fixating or focusing, meditating, praying through not being a judgmental person. But what that looks like for my life means I need to be more authentic with people. And so, yeah, I do need help sometimes because I have anxiety and I need some support here. And that's okay, you know?
Yes, 100%. Oh my gosh, Christina, this has been such a refreshing conversation. And
I love your energy and you're always just so, no, for real. I love how you just keep it real. It's so nice and refreshing. It really is.
well, I feel the exact same way about you. And I have to be totally honest, when you and I first talked, it was last October, and
Mhm.
October last year was just like a wild month. There was just something big every week for like 4 weeks straight, and traveling, and I was just like a mess. And
Yes.
and including we did 3 photo shoots in 3 days
Yeah.
with Jeff. And
Yeah.
Jeff said, "Oh yeah, my friend is looking for somebody in Denver." And I was a little bit like, "Oh shit, I don't have time for that." And I was
Yeah.
like, "What am I doing? Like, this is a friend asking, like, of course I'm gonna." So I was like, "Give her me your number. I'm gonna call her." And I am so glad that I got out of my own way and told you, because I instantly was like, "Who is she? She's lovely. I adore
Yeah.
her. Let's be friends." And and of course you're from Austin, so I feel that connection with you,
Of
and I
course.
can't wait to get down to the Austin area
Yes.
again
And
and
I'm
meet in
hopeful
person.
to go to Denver sometime soon and I'll reach
Please,
out to you because we
please
need to go to
do
lunch together or dinner or a drink or
all the things.
all the things.
Oh, beautiful. Well, we'll make sure to link to everything in your world and our show notes. But before we
So,
go, share with our listeners where they can find you online and on Instagram and wherever else you might show up.
okay. So, I mean, this to me is the hardest question that you've asked me the whole.
Spell it out. You got this.
I'm not even kidding you. I had to write it down because
I love you so much.
the introvert in me is like, is anyone really going to look? Like, who cares?
They
Okay.
will. And when
On
they do, they're going to be like, "Yeah, girl."
okay. So let's see. Where am I? On Instagram. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing. Okay. Canales and Co. Interiors is on Instagram. And then we're working on my new website, which will be Canales and Co. Interiors, or just Canales Co. Interiors. And I'm so sorry. You're just like probably
You're the
laughing.
best. You're so delightful.
So funny.
I'm cracking up. I'm obsessed.
And then my husband's website, which is essentially our website because it shares my work, is Canales and Co.
Cool.
It's just a lot.
It's a lot to keep up with. Let's be
I already
honest.
answered
Give yourself a break.
is it and I don't know.
Oh my
And
gosh. I know. Well,
so
and I run two
it's cool.
businesses too. So I meet myself coming and going, but you got this. You nailed it. You nailed it, Christina.
Wrote
Okay.
it down. Wrote it down.
Last question
Yeah.
before we go, and this I'm totally throwing you on the spot. Is there anything that you're reading right now that you are really loving, fiction or nonfiction, or even audiobook that has been really fun for you?
Okay, so here's the deal.
Yeah.
I do audiobooks all the time because
Yeah.
my kids are at two different schools. I live and breathe by just I need like a place to escape to while I'm driving.
Yeah.
Um, and these are the books that I read last year, but one of my favorites was It Didn't Start With You. Have you heard of that one?
Wait a second.
So it's basically how we react to people in old familiar ways of the past. And it talks about how there are certain behaviors that are passed down genetically through us.
Yeah.
And anyways, it really helped me see some things that I have in me that have been passed down generations. A lot of times you feel guilty, like, why am I like this? It's like, well, this has been a thing, a reoccurring thing within your family for decades or generations, and
Mm-hmm.
really talking
Mm-hmm.
through that. So yeah, that's a great
Love
book
that. We'll be sure
that
to
I
link to this, to all these in the.
and then
I have. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What is it?
I have one more. This one
Please,
changed.
you give me 10. I don't care.
This one really did change my whole life. I read this one in September of 2022, and this one's called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And
Ooh.
it can feel a little, a little too much at times, but the takeaway is you have the ability to control your mind and what you put in it. And coming back to the things that we've said, it really just helped me create a good script for going into trying to build out our interiors program. So,
I love this so much. I am going to be sure to link
okay,
these
what are you
books
reading?
in our
What are
show.
you?
Oh my God. Where's
You're
my
like,
phone?
I know that's what I did. Like,
What I've got a few books that I've got in the queue that I'm listening to right now, and I usually make a habit of like, okay, one at a time, one book at a time. I do all of my fiction on paper in hardback, but I do all of everything else in Audible.
okay,
What am I reading right now? God, I should have this like
yeah, I
dedicated to
put you
memory,
on the
but
spot.
ah, oh yeah. Okay. The Win Without Pitching Manifesto by Blair Enns, which is
Hey,
it's a sales psychology book. And it really is about taking back the control of your sales process, but
that.
doing it in a real client-centric way. So really the only way to get to understanding a client's desired future state requires deep questioning and listening.
Yeah,
And we oftentimes fail to do that deep questioning and listening and make a lot of assumptions, which puts us in an inferior position to be able to take a client to the next step with you, but without pitching. So for anybody who like bristles at sales, I think that's a really good book. Oh, The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan
okay.
is another one. And have two more in here, but I haven't started them, so I can't speak to them. But The Gap and the Gain is a fantastic book. And that is essentially switching your mindset between where you want to go and where you are, and really focusing on how much you've already achieved and what you already have to work with,
Yeah.
rather than what is deficient, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to understand deficiency so that we can fill the gap, kind of like you were talking about earlier. But that there's a lot of momentum behind recognizing what you already have and where you've
Yes.
already come from.
I love that. And I think that's so helpful. I did an exercise with the team a few weeks ago. I just like showed them visuals of like where I want us to go. I picked out interior designers that do similar things. And so I said, like, this is look at like what they're working on. This is where they're at. And then I discussed all the things that we've just accomplished in 1 year. And it was just like that. I'm really happy and proud of us. And even just coming on this podcast, I was able to sit through and be like, oh, I did this. This is oh, I just never talk about it. And so it does help you realize, okay, yeah, there is momentum and it's good to talk about that. And it's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, I love book recommendations. Yours are great. I'm going to be sure to add them
Yeah.
to the show notes. Christina, you are a
Thank you
delight,
for
and
having me.
I really hope that we can have you back here again someday. You guys go follow her on Instagram. She's got some just beautiful work and fun to follow. And thank you so much for sharing your date with us.
I cannot wait for us to connect in Denver or Austin.
I would love that. All right. Take care, Christina. Bye for now.
Bye.
Hey friend, thank you so much for letting me spend a part of this day with you. I'm so passionate about helping designers like you, and I believe in a rising tide, that when one of us does well, we all do better. So if you share this attitude of abundance with me, I want you to do just one little thing. Please share this episode with someone you think might love it. And if you're feeling extra generous today, go ahead and take just 30 seconds to open your podcast app and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It's free for you to do, and it helps me to be able to keep making more episodes and resources for you. However you choose to help, please know I appreciate you so very much. Thank you, my friend. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you soon.